Hello everyone, welcome to this session. In the previous section, we discussed there are three major forms of economic system. One is market mechanism or capitalism, and second one is socialism, and the third one is mixed economy. That is a mix of both capitalism and socialism. So of this, the capitalism, that is also called as a free market economy, it works mainly on the basis of the market principles. So in this session, we are going to discuss how does market system work. So in order to understand how market system work, the mainly we use two tools. One is called demand and the other one is called supply. And we use two important tools, demand and supply. And this is also called as market mechanism. So by the free play of demand and supply, most of the fundamental economic problems are answered. What to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce. This kind of basic economic problems are being answered through market mechanism. So simply this market mechanism means simply the demand and supply framework. So before I go further, I want to say that especially the market mechanism, free market economy, it works on the basis of the individual's rationality. Irrationality by consumers. Consumers want to maximize their utility and producers wants to maximize their profit, and a government wants to maximize social welfare. So in that way, there is a rationality for each and every economic agents. So in this framework, market mechanism plays a key role. So in this session, we will be delving in deep into the market mechanism. So what is meant by demand and what is meant by supply. So you might have heard about demand and supply from various sources. So in today's lecture, we are going to clearly define what is meant by demand and what is meant by supply and how does it work in an economy. So using the demand and supply analysis, we are going to discuss how market prices are determined by the interaction of demand and supply. So to make the discussion much simpler and straightforward, our approach will be that initially we concentrate on how prices influence the behavior of consumers. That means by discussing at that time, we will be focusing on the demand side of the economy. Then similarly, how prices influence the behavior of producers. That means the supply side of the economy. So later on, once we complete this discussion, then we will move into how there is an interaction between demand and how interaction between demand and supply leads to the price determination. This is the framework through which we are going to have this discussion. So let me now move to some of the fundamental decision-making units in an economy. So mainly there are two economic agents are there. One is called firms and the other one is called households. So about firms, firms are primary producing units in an economy. So they are an organization that transforms input into output. So about firm, a firm is a single business entity, and often you might have come across the distinction between firms and industry. So when it comes to firms, firm is a single business entity, whereas industry is a broader category of encompassing multiple firms that produce similar goods or services. So for example, firms in the phone industry. So the firms are Sony, Samsung, Apple, Oppo, Vivo, etc. are the firms, but the industry means phone industry. That is the distinction between firms and industry. Then another important decision-making unit is the households. Households are generally considered as the consuming units in an economy. So to get a clear idea how these two entities interact each other, so they do it mainly in the output market and input markets. So their interaction can be understood using a circular flow. So the circular flow works in a way that firms and households interact in two primary kinds of markets. One is output market and the other one is called input market or factor market. So before going further, let me clearly point out what are the factors of production. So the inputs, the factors. So mainly there are four critical factors of productions are there. One is called land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship. So labor, there is a labor market is there. That means the input market in which households supply work for wages to firms. And there are capital market. Capital market means the input market in which households supply their savings for interest or claims to future profits to firms. And third one is called land market. In this market, households supply land and natural resources in exchange for rent. And finally, we have entrepreneurship, who is the promoter who organizes the production process. So there are four factors of production. Broadly, we put into two categories. One is called labor and the other one is capital. That is for sake of simplicity and ease of discussion. We broadly put it to categorize it into labor and capital. So labor includes labor market, the workers and the entrepreneurship, and capital includes the capital which I mentioned plus land. So to get a clear idea how firms and household interact in this market, I am showing you a circular flow diagram. So in this you can see that how input and output markets are connected. So here first I am showing you this one. These are the households, one of the decision making units in an economy. Households are the owners of all factors of production: land, labor, capital and organization that belong to this household. And firms, that is the another decision making unit, they are the organizers of production. They convert inputs into output. So since households are the owners of the factors of production, so they supply these factors of production, all the four factors of production, to the firm. So they are the supplier of factors of production, and then firms are the demanders of these factors of production. So that means these inputs reach to the firms, and firms convert or transform these inputs into output. And for example, using this input, for example, they produce 100 billion of goods and services, suppose. So then what happened that when 100 billion of goods and services are produced here, all these 100, it will be distributed among four factors of production in the form of wage, rent, interest plus profit. Right, in this way it will be distributed. So suppose the distribution is in this way: plus 60% is for wage, 10% is for rent, and 5% is for interest, and remaining all that 15% become profit for the entrepreneur. So that means 100 billions of goods and services are produced here. When 100 billions of goods and services are produced here, what happened that equivalent factor income is generated, and that one will be going to the households. That means 100 billions of factor income is equivalently generated. So this is nothing but the including this wage income, interest income, the rent income, interest income plus the remaining, that is the profit for the entrepreneurship. So that means when 100 billions of goods and services are produced, equivalently there is 100 billion of income. Income here means factor income is being generated. Then what this household will do? Household will use this one for buying goods and services from the goods market that is produced by the firm. So that means this $100 billion will go to firms again, and in return they will be getting goods and services. So in that way, what happened that this circular flow will automatically, it will keep on moving further and further and further. So that means this is an automatic process. We don't need any external intervention here, because households are the owners of the factors of production and firms are the producers of goods and services. And if there is more and more factors of production are coming, suppose there is more population growth is there, then that means there are more factors of production is coming. They also will go to the firm. Then with the firm will produce equivalent goods and services. Then that will be equivalent factor income also will be generated, and that will be demanded, and accordingly the flow will keep on happening and the economy will be moving ahead. If there is increase in more factors of production or increase in technological advancement and productivity, then more goods and services will be produced, more factor income will be generated, and then the standard of living of the people also will increase. So this is the simply my objective here is to show this is the framework through which firms and households interact in the output and input markets. So this is how firms determine, and I forgot to show this one, and households determine the types and quantities of products demanded and the quantities and types of inputs supplied. So since I gave you a brief introduction about the input market and the output market, now using this framework, let us discuss one of the market in detail. So let us start with the demand in product market, because in the while showing the diagram, the circular flow diagram, I have used the term like demand, supply, etc. So let us start with one of the term, that is demand. What is meant by demand? So let us define and understand it, and then let us use it in our discussion. So starting with the basic question, what is meant by demand? So that is the term you often hear from multiple sources. There is demand for goods and services, there is less demand for goods and services. What does it mean? So when we say demand, actually we mean quantity demanded. So that means that is the amount of a good that buyers are willing and able to purchase. So here mainly there are two conditions how to be satisfied. One is willingness to buy. Second one is ability to buy. Suppose he has a willingness to buy a Mercedes car, but that won't constitute demand because an ability to pay is not fulfilled there. So a poor man demanding a Mercedes car or a jet flight won't constitute a demand, because even they are willing to buy, but they don't have the ability to buy. And similarly, anyway, a rich person, suppose he has the ability to buy everything, but he doesn't want to buy, that also won't constitute a demand. So importantly, demand means there should be the both willingness to buy as well as ability to buy. Both conditions have to be satisfied. So then moving to the second related point is called law of demand. So in the law of demand, so I have shown you here two pictures, two emojis. So what is shown that in one case here, when the price is declining, when the price is very low, they are demanding more. And in this case, when price is very high, when they are relatively high, then they are demanding less. So what does it mean? That when the price is low, when the price is falling, people are demanding more. When the price is increasing, people are demanding less. So that means there is an inverse relationship between price of a good and its quantity demanded. That is called as the law of demand. That means the inverse relationship between price of a good and its quantity demanded. So about the law of demand, since there is an inverse relationship, so when we plot it on a diagram, what we can see that there is a inverse relationship. For example, it look like this. So the demand curve, when we plot price on the y-axis and quantity demanded on the x-axis, then when we plot this relationship, when the price is very high, when the price is 15, quantity demanded is very less. When the price is 7, quantity demanded is this. When the price falls to 3.5, quantity demanded increases. So that means there is an inverse relationship here. So that is called the law of demand. That means inverse relationship or the negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. So this is how, when we plot this relationship on a schedule, we call it demand schedule. So in the demand schedule, if you draw, you can read this one vertical downwards or upwards. Suppose if you read downwards, read it down, that means when price increases, what you can see that the quantity demanded decreases, or otherwise when the price increases, quantity demanded increases. So that means there is an inverse relationship as per this schedule, this table. This I already explained. So it also has the demand curve. It also has other interpretation, because when you look at, for example, when the price is 10, a typical consumer, the representative consumer that we are discussing here, he or she is willing to buy 1 unit of this good. And when the price is 7, they are willing to buy 3 units. When the price is 3.5, they are willing to buy 7 units. So what does it mean? When we are talking about one particular commodity, one particular good or service, each and every point along the curve, it depicts the willingness to pay of the consumer. So for example, when the price is 10, for 1 unit, they are willing to pay 10 rupees. For 7 units, they are willing to pay only 3.5 rupees here. So it's actually in dollar units, so you can interpret accordingly. So when the 25 units, they are willing to pay only 0.5 dollar. So that means each and every point along this demand curve, it depicts willingness to pay as well as how much they value this product. So that's the marginal valuation of the benefits of the product by consumers. So that means each and every line is the willingness to pay plus the marginal valuation of the benefits of the product by consumers taking place along this curve. So when I try to plot a linear demand curve, it looks like this. So on the y-axis there is price, and on the x-axis we have quantity demanded. So first we are writing a demand equation. Quantity demanded is the dependent variable. So this is shown as QD is equal to 40 minus 2P. So to express P as a function of Q, so we can also calculate the inverse demand function. That means P as a function of Q, because here we wrote Q as a function of P, but you can also express it as P as a function of Q, which can be done by rearranging this one, and this one would lead to P is equal to 20 minus 0.5 QD. So that is the inverse demand function. So when you get the inverse demand function, since we are plotting price on the y-axis and quantity on the x-axis, the slope of this line, the slope is this one, this is the slope, that this minus this minus. So the slope that we are getting here is minus 0.5 is the slope that we are getting. The slope of this demand curve is 0.5 minus, because it's already, you can see that there is a negative slopes from left to right. So the slope here is minus 0.5. So when we talk about demand in product markets, we can see from this diagram that two important things. One, there is an intersection with price axis. So you can see here that there is an intersection in the price axis. That means the demand curve, it intersects here. On the price axis, on the y-axis it intersects, and on the x-axis also it intersects. So why? What is the meaning? What is the interpretation of this intersection? So the intersection with the price axis means that the maximum price in our example is 20. So what does it mean? We should already seen that this is the marginal valuation or the willingness to pay by a typical consumer for that particular product, right? So because of the limited income and wealth, and also their own valuation, how much it's worth. So this is their maximum willingness to pay. So they don't see that price per unit. They are not willing to pay more than 20. They see that more than 20 is not worth, or they are not able to afford it. So because of limited income and wealth, and as well as their own marginal valuation, they think that the maximum willingness to pay is 20. When the price is 21, that is not happen. By 20 itself, they are going to demand only 0. So that means that is their maximum willingness to pay. So for any commodity, there is always a price above which a household will not and cannot pay. So even if the good or service is essential, all households are ultimately constrained by income and wealth. And second one is intersection with the quantity axis. So here you can see that in our example, the maximum quantity is 40. So the quantity demanded in each period is limited even at a 0 price. Even when the price is 0, they are willing to consume maximum 40 units. For example, the mobile phone call that you are making, even when the price is 0, when the price drops, you are not going to make unlimited call, right? There is certain quantity you will consume. You will make a certain number of calls, but beyond that, you don't want, right? Even if the price is 0, there is a limit for that. That's the maximum limit. So at that point, it intersects with the x-axis. Then we have seen here that the demand curve is sloping downward from left to right. And why? Why demand curve slopes downwards? So there are mainly two factors, two effects. One is called income effect. Income effect means when the price of a commodity falls, the purchasing power of an individual with a given income increases, allowing for greater purchases. Suppose, just take a simple example. Suppose price declines from 10 to 5. Suppose it declines from 10 to 5. So then imagine the scenario. Earlier you have been paying 10 rupees per cup of tea, but now you need to pay only 5. So then you can see that for buying 1 cup of tea, now you have saved 5. So you have more income. When that means your real income, the purchasing power has increased because the decline in the price. So because of that, your purchasing power has increased. Now you can buy more of this commodity. Right, you may buy 2 units. Earlier you are buying only 1 unit when the price was 10. Now prices become half. Now you can afford 2. So buy it because of increase in real income. That is one reason, and we call this one as income effect. So income effect clearly means increase in real income or the purchasing power here. And the second one is, as a commodity's price falls, an individual typically purchases more of the goods since he is likely to substitute for another good where the price remains unchanged. So let us take the example of tea and coffee. Suppose the product that we are talking about is, for example, tea. So in this case, suppose the price of tea declines from 10 to 5 and the price of coffee remains the same at 10 itself. Then what's going to happen? So you know that when price of tea declines to 5 from 10 and price of coffee remaining same, then you are going to demand more tea and you are going to demand less coffee, because now you see that the tea is much cheaper. So people will shift to, if suppose you have been drinking per day 5 cup of coffee and 5 cup of tea, now because of this price change, now you are going to drink maybe 9 cup of tea and 1 cup of coffee because the price of tea has declined. And similarly, some of the consumers who have been drinking coffee, they may switch to tea now. So they will be drinking more tea or demanding more tea because of this price change. As a result, we can say that there is increase in the quantity of tea demanded. So this is called substitution effect. So in this example, what we can see that a single point on the demand curve indicates a single combination of price and quantity demanded. The whole demand curve shows the complete relationship between price and quantity demanded. So here, when we are making this discussion, demand curve and demand schedule are constructed on the ceteris paribus assumption. That means other things remaining constant. That means income, wealth, taste and preferences, price of related goods, etc. remaining constant. So what if we change the ceteris paribus assumptions? So because as you already know that consumers' household demand for a particular good or service depends on several factors. One we already discussed, that one is the price of the product in question. Then what if there is changes in income available to the consumer, accumulated wealth changes, prices of other related products changes, household taste and preferences change, and because of all these factors, including their expectation about the future income, wealth and prices, all these are going to make some changes in the quantity demanded, even when the price of the product in question remaining constant. So that we need to show, this is the one which we have discussed already, that the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. So that means an increase in quantity demanded, we already discussed here, when price declines. So suppose when price remaining same, suppose this is the price 7.5 for example, when there is increase in income, how are we going to plot this one? So this can be done in this way. Suppose the price is this way here, 7.5 for example. So when at that time they are demanding this much, for example 5 units. Now their income has increased at the same price. Now they are going to demand more because their income has increased. So now they are going to demand, for example, 20 units. So this is how we are going to show. That means with the curve shift to rightwards, that means there is an increase in demand. So we need to make a distinction between this term. In the first case, when only price changes, we say increase in quantity demanded. When price remaining constant, other things changes, then we say that there is an increase in demand. So this is how we show this one. When demand increases, the curve shift to the right. So this is a typical representation of the point that we discussed so far. The curve will be, we can show when the income increases from 300 per month to 600 per month, then the curve will be shifting rightwards. That means at the same price, now they are demanding more. So this is how the elaborated extended demand equation look when we include other factors into account. So this is a simplification of the demand function. In addition to on price, it depends on so many other factors as well. And what we discussed so far was individual demand. So individual demand, that means demanded by household A. When the price is 3.5, they demanded 4. When similarly this household, when the price is 3.5, they demand 0. When this household, when the price is 3.5, they demanded 4. So suppose in an economy there were only 3 households, then at price 3.5, what is the market demand here? At this one particular price point, how much is the quantity demanded by all the households? So you can see that when the price is 3.5, the market demanded 8. 8 means you can clearly see here 4 plus 0 plus 4. Right, so that is the market demand here. So this is how, when we plot this one, that the price and the quantity demanded by all households, so then when we plot this one, we are going to get market demand. Then let us now move to another related theme, that is the supply in product market. So supply means mainly is done by the firms. So firms engage in production and supply of goods and services. So an important thing is that why firms produce goods and services, because they want to maximize their profit. So profit means, profit is defined as the difference between total revenue and total cost. So what are the determinants of revenue? Revenue means the total revenue in this case. Total revenue means price of a product multiplied by how much is sold. So total revenue means revenue is equal to price times the quantity sold, quantity supplied. That is the total revenue. And what are the determinants of cost? What the determinants of the cost are the input or factors of production being used in the production process plus price of inputs. So our discussion about supply is going to be much simpler, since we already discussed the demand concept thoroughly. So in this case, what is meant by supply here? Just like quantity demanded, here it means quantity supplied. Quantity supplied, that means the amount of a particular product that a firm would be willing and able to sell at a particular price during a given time period. So similarly, we can interpret the law of supply. Law of supply means when higher the price, the firms are willing to supply more. When the price is low, they are willing to supply less. So that means an increase in market price will lead to an increase in quantity supplied. A decrease in market price lead to a decrease in quantity supplied. So this is the supply schedule, is self-explanatory, and similarly this is the supply curve, that means it slopes upward from left to right, but after a certain point of time you can see that it becomes vertical. Vertical means is constrained by their capacity to produce. So some examples are there. A firm's ability to increase output is constrained by capacity to produce. That means Dell might want to supply more number of laptops at a certain price, but is constrained by the capacity of its factory. So similarly, a firm's decision about the quantity of output to supply depends on price, cost of producing the product, and the prices of related products. So I'll try to be so brief here. Because the cost of production, so regardless of the price that a firm can receive for its product, revenue must exceed the cost of producing the output for the firm to make a profit. So the supply decision is likely to change in response to a change in cost of production. So cost of production, it depends on available technology, prices, and quantities of inputs. So if technology can have enormous positive impact on the cost of production over time, you may be aware the invention of nitrogen fertilizer that made a breakthrough in agriculture. Agriculture cost of production declined, the production of agriculture products increased dramatically, enormous increase was there. Similarly, so many other factors, the GM crops, and the technological advances in computers and smartphones. So because of the reduced cost of production, output supplied increases. So this is, for example, when there is at the given price, suppose this is the given price, they produce this much. And if there is, because of the, if I'm just showing you the effect of green revolution, as a result, the cost of production decline, now they are producing more, right? The same price they are producing here more. That means the curve is shifting rightwards. So the prices of the related products, it also affects the supply curve. So I'm just showing you some slides here. These are all self-explanatory. I'm not elaborating these much. So the way we discuss the demand, we can also, because what we discussed so far is individual supply. So similarly, each and every firm in an economy, when they are at a given price for a particular firm in an industry, how much they are willing to supply. For example, there are three firms, firm A, firm B, firm C. Then when we sum it, that means at a given price, when the price is 5, what firms A, B and C they are willing to supply. This is their willings to supply. When we are summing, we are getting the market quantity demanded. So when we are plotting this one, we are going to get the market supply. So this is the market supply that we are going to get. And thank you. And in the next session, we will make an interpretation how supply and demand intersect in the market and how prices are determined by the free play of demand and supply forces. Thank you.